Welcome, villagers, to the village hidden in the stories. I'm your guide, KAGE, the creator and author of all the what-if stories you see on this channel, with your awesome suggestions, of course. I write, edit, and produce every story you hear, so if you're wondering who made it, it's me. I hope you enjoy today's video. Be sure to leave your what-if ideas in the comments and subscribe if you're new. Today's story is What If Naruto Was in Miraculous Part 6, I hope you like it, as this will be the final of Season 1, and I'll be taking a break before getting to Season 2. And if you'd like to support the channel, check out my Patreon, link in the description. For just $5, you can get early access, full text transcripts, thumbnails, art, and even some gaming content. Now, without further ado, let's jump into this what if. Part 6, New Start. Marinette landed softly on the rooftop, the night air cold against her skin, the darkness pressing in on all sides. The wind whispered past her ears, and a thud sounded beside her. She didn't need to look, she already knew who it was. With a quiet sigh, she murmured the words under her breath, letting her Ladybug transformation fade away. Civilian clothes replaced red and black, but the suspicion in her eyes remained, sharper now, deeper. One answer had come, only to bring more questions in its wake. She stepped through the hatch into her room, shadows curling in the corners like secrets. Of course he followed, she didn't care. Dropping into her desk chair, Marinette slowly turned to face the figure who had been beside her the entire time. Her hand reached for the light switch, never taking her eyes off him. Warm light spilled across the room, casting the truth in stark relief. Naruto Uzumaki. The foreign blonde from Japan. The boy who always smiled, who helped without question, who wandered Paris like it was a story waiting to be lived. That was who she thought he was, who she thought her crush was. But now, she wasn't so sure. He stood just inside the room, calm but worn down, the fight still clinging to him. His fire shadow attire was scuffed and torn, his hood and mask gone. Without them, he looked more human, more real. More distant. Naruto moved to his side of the room and sat down, not with his usual grin, not with a playful greeting, but in silence. And that silence wrapped around Marinette like a storm waiting to break. She didn't speak, not yet. She wanted answers. And now, she was finally going to get them. With a sigh, Marinette was the first to break the silence. So, are you going to start explaining, or do I have to kick your butt again? Her voice wasn't playful. It wasn't angry, or kind, or teasing. She was dead serious, calm, composed, and unreadable. It made Naruto freeze. She hadn't meant it to sound so harsh, but there was no better way to say it. Maybe he did trust her, maybe his unmasking had been proof of that. But it didn't make things easier. If anything, it made it worse, because now she had to connect him, her crush, her friend, with Fire Shadow, the masked figure who had lied to them, fought them, and kept secrets for who knows how long. She wanted to trust Naruto, but she didn't trust Fire Shadow. And right now, they were the same person. Naruto finally let out a breath and tapped something on his wrist. In a quiet pulse of light, the Fire Shadow suit dissolved, revealing his usual clothes beneath, a white shirt, orange jacket, and worn blue jeans. It made it easier to look at him, but not by much. "What do you want to hear first?" he asked, voice low. "There's a lot. But I want to start with what matters most." "Why were you following Gabriel Agresti?" Marinette asked, quick and to the point. Naruto nodded slowly. He turned his gaze to the window for a moment, then back to her. His face stayed still, unreadable. "I figured that'd be your first question," he said. "It was the turning point, the reason you and Chat thought I was the enemy." Naruto leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees, his voice even but low. I had a hunch, he began. About Gabriel Agresti, something felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was connected to everything, Hawk Moth, the attacks, the Akumas, all of it. Marinette's expression tightened, but she didn't speak. I followed him for days, Naruto continued, watched his patterns, tried to pick up anything, any sign that he was involved. But, I was wrong, at least, mostly. He glanced up at her, Gabriel still suspicious, controlling, secretive. He's definitely hiding something, maybe a lot. But I haven't found anything that directly links him to the attacks on Paris. He paused, just for a second. But Marinette caught it. The way his words trailed off, the slight flicker in his eyes. You're still hiding something, she said quietly, not accusing, just observing. Even after saying you trust me. Naruto slowly raised his hands, palms forward, non-threatening. It's not like that. I do trust you, that's why I showed you who I am. Why I'm here right now instead of finding another place to live. But, this isn't my secret to tell. Marinette's brows furrowed. I may trust you, Naruto continued, but I can't betray someone else's trust to prove it, that's not how this works. He let that sit for a moment, then added, but I didn't come to that suspicion on my own. I had help, someone gave me a nudge in the right direction, and some information. He leaned back slightly, gaze distant. There's something darker out there, bigger than Hawk Moth. Something hidden, watching, I don't know what it is yet, but it's moving through the shadows of Paris. And it's not playing by the same rules. Marinette exhaled, slowly. Her eyes flicked to the side, her thoughts spiraling in silence. She wanted to believe him, she really did. But every answer only brought more questions. And the truth, still felt just out of reach. Marinette narrowed her eyes. You said someone gave you the information, so who helped you? Naruto shook his head almost immediately. That's not something I can say, it's not for me to tell. That answer didn't sit well, Marinette's patience snapped, just a little. She stood from her chair, her voice rising, not in a shout, but in that clipped, heated way someone speaks when they're tired of being left in the dark. So you trust me, but not enough to tell me that. You say you're not hiding anything, but every time I ask a question, I get another half answer. Naruto didn't flinch, he let her speak, let her feel it, and then answered calmly. I'm not trying to push you away, I just don't want to betray someone else's trust, that's all. I'm not the only one with secrets. Marinette's jaw tightened, her arms crossed. Fine, she muttered, cooling just slightly. Then tell me this, why did you even come to Paris, what were you doing before all this, before Fire's shadow, before everything? Naruto blinked, then looked toward the floor for a second, just a moment of honesty surfacing in his tired expression. It was a test, he said. My clan sent me here. Not to spy, or to fight, or to be a hero. They told me to find myself, to figure out who I wanted to be in a world that didn't need chakra anymore. His eyes met hers again, nothing more. Marinette stared at him. You keep saying, chakra. I've looked it up before, bits and pieces, some weird old theories, but I never really got it. Naruto leaned back a bit in his chair, thinking through how to explain something so massive. Chakra is energy, he said. It's spiritual and physical combined. It flows through us, like a life force, it can heal, destroy, transform. It can be used to walk on walls, summon fire, sense emotions, even control the elements. He raised a hand and focused for a second. A soft flicker of light danced over his palm, a faint shimmer of raw chakra, swirling like mist. I was chosen by my clan to help bring it back, he said. Not to force it on the world, but to protect it. To remind the world what it used to be, and maybe what it could still become. Marinette stared at the chakra in his hand. For the first time since the reveal, she didn't say anything right away. It hit her all at once, every move he made in battle, every technique she couldn't explain, every moment Fire's shadow seemed to move like he wasn't bound by gravity or physics. It wasn't multiple powers, it was one, chakra. She sank slowly back into her chair, still watching his hand before it faded. So all of that, your speed, the way you fight, the clones, the blasts, it's all chakra. Naruto nodded, all of it. She was quiet for another beat, then asked softly, are there others like you? A few, he said. But most either don't know what they are, or are hiding in the shadows. Marinette's eyes narrowed slightly, and the person who helped you, they're one of them too? Naruto hesitated for a moment, but shook his head no. She sighed and leaned back, crossing her arms again, her mind raced. What about this darker thing you mentioned? What is it? Is it connected to Hawk Moth, or something completely different? I don't know yet, Naruto admitted, but I've seen its signs. Shadows where there shouldn't be, energy that doesn't feel like anything I've faced before. I think it's been here a while, just waiting. Marinette's eyes flicked to the window, to the dark rooftops outside, waiting, watching. The world suddenly felt a little less safe than it had an hour ago. Marinette stared at the floor, her fingers curling into the fabric of her pants. Her voice came quiet at first, almost too quiet to hear. I don't know what to think anymore. Naruto looked over, but she didn't meet his eyes. You were always there, she went on, her voice trembling at the edges now. Smiling. Helping me. Helping everyone. You were this kind, bright, annoying boy who somehow made everything feel a little less overwhelming. Her words were coming faster now, like a dam cracking open. And I thought I knew you, not all of you, I get that, no one shows everything, but I thought I had some idea. I thought that when you helped me with the movie set, or made dumb jokes in class, or stayed up to study with me, that was real. That was you. She let out a breath, shaky, pained. But now I don't know. I don't know if any of that was real or just some part of the test your clan gave you. I don't know if I was just some mission checkpoint, and I hate that I even have to ask myself that. Her voice cracked, did I ever really know you? And before she even had time to register the tears in her own eyes, Naruto moved. He crossed the space between them in a heartbeat, gently pulling her into a hug. At first, she froze, completely still, shocked, but she didn't pull away. His arms wrapped around her like he meant it. Like he needed her to hear what came next. Marinette, he said softly against her hair. None of that was fake. She swallowed, hard, and her eyes squeezed shut. I didn't tell you everything, yeah, Naruto said, his voice low, honest. I hid my past, my abilities, but I never faked who I was with you. You weren't a checkpoint, you're not just some test I have to pass. He pulled back just enough to look her in the eye, his hands still resting gently on her shoulders. We're friends, we're a team, that part has always been real. You've been more of a home to me than anyone in years. Her breath hitched, and finally, her gaze met his. Not ladybugs, not fire shadows, just Marinette and Naruto. Marinette looked at him for a long moment, her smile fading into something softer, more serious. There's just one more thing, she said, voice steady now. And I want the truth this time. No holding back. Naruto nodded slowly, all right. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. Why do you fight? Not just as fire shadow, not just for some clan, not just to poke around Paris in shadows. Why do you really fight, Naruto? He blinked, just once, but it hit him deeper than he expected. Not what do you fight with? Not what are you fighting against? But why? He didn't answer right away. And Marinette didn't push. She just sat back, watching him, waiting. The silence that followed her question echoed louder in Naruto's head than any battle he'd fought. Why do you fight? He'd been asked before, by elders, by his father, by enemies even. But coming from her, it felt different. Because this time, he couldn't lie. And maybe, for the first time, he didn't want to. With those thoughts in mind, a familiar grin finally found its way back to Naruto's face. For the first time in what felt like forever, it didn't feel forced. It felt right. The tension between him and Marinette had eased, and for now, the weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. I fight to protect my team, he said softly, his voice warm again, gentle in a way that wrapped around the room like a comfort. My friends. My precious people. Marinette smiled at that, a small one, but genuine. The kind of smile that said she believed him. A quiet moment passed between them, soft and still, before she pulled away, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. Well, she murmured, brushing a bit of hair behind her ear, I guess that means we're still teammates, though. She glanced at him, playful now. I can't say the same for Chat, he was way more angry than I was when we confronted you. Her teasing tone was light, kind, exactly what Naruto needed after the day he'd just had. Sure, the investigation hadn't gone the way he wanted. But at least one thing was clear now, Marinette trusted him again. That meant more than she probably realized. Still, her words stuck with him. She didn't know who Chat Noir really was. Would never want to, probably. But he did, and as Naruto thought about it, the tension crept back in. He didn't know how that fight, fists and powers clashing under the moonlight, had really affected Adrien. Now that they both knew the truth. How could he explain everything, could he? He'd have to figure that out, and fast. This weekend, this weekend felt like the right time. Time skip. The sun hung low over Paris, casting long golden shadows across the streets as Naruto stood silently outside the tall gates of the Agresti mansion. His hands were buried deep in his jacket pockets, eyes steady, waiting. The sound of footsteps echoed against the stone path before the gate finally opened. Adrien stepped out, his expression cold and distant, so unlike the easygoing friend Naruto was used to. So, Adrien spoke first, voice low but sharp, you actually showed up. His eyes narrowed slightly, I already know why you're here, and you know that I know too. His fists tightened at his sides, fire shadow. Naruto's gaze didn't flinch, but he gave a small nod. I said I'd tell you everything, didn't I? His voice was calm, almost quiet, but Adrien wasn't interested in hearing it. Adrien let out a humorless chuckle and took a step forward, giving Naruto a firm shove in the chest. I don't need your explanations, his voice cracked with emotion, both anger and something deeper beneath. You had the chance to trust us, to trust me, but you didn't. You were following my father Naruto, you went behind my back and spied on him. You treated him like some kind of criminal, and you didn't even bother to tell me. Naruto took a small breath, steadying himself, lifting his hands slightly, not in defense, but in quiet surrender. Adrien, I wasn't trying to hurt you, I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I had a hunch, and I followed it, I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me, Adrien's voice sharpened. Or protecting your secret. Because to me it looked like you decided your own gut feeling mattered more than our friendship. You followed an innocent man, you were wrong, and you still acted like you couldn't trust us to help. Naruto lowered his hands, the guilt heavy on his face. I never wanted it to go this way, I thought I was doing the right thing. Adrien looked away for a moment, jaw tight, before his voice softened, not in forgiveness, but in exhaustion. The right thing, you don't get to decide that alone. Silence stretched between them for a long moment, broken only by the distant sounds of the city. Naruto finally spoke again, his voice lower, more honest. I wasn't just following a hunch. I've seen things, Adrien. Things that connect your father to Hawk Moth, and things bigger than Hawk Moth. I couldn't risk waiting. Adrien's expression flickered, the weight of his father's secrets pressing on him, but the anger still burned beneath. Even if that's true, he muttered, you should have trusted me enough to tell me first. Naruto nodded slowly, you're right, I should have. The words hung in the air, heavy and unshakable. Naruto's fists tightened inside his pockets, his gaze dropping for just a second before lifting to meet Adrien's again. I wasn't trying to shut you out, he said quietly, I thought keeping you away from it would protect you. I thought if I handled it alone, you wouldn't get hurt. Adrien shook his head, lips pressed into a thin line. That's not how teams work, Naruto, you don't get to carry everything on your own and leave the rest of us in the dark. His voice wasn't as sharp now, it was steady, bitter, but almost tired. Do you have any idea what it felt like, watching you fight us, lie to us, all while you were chasing down my father like he was some villain? Naruto's chest ached at those words. He'd told himself from the start that the truth could wait, that distance would make it easier. Now, standing here, he could see how much damage that choice had done. I never wanted to fight you, he said, his voice soft but certain. But I couldn't risk going away if it was all true, I thought pushing you away would keep you and Ladybug safe. Naruto almost slipped, he didn't want to accidentally reveal someone else's secret. Adrien let out a sharp breath, the anger in him dimming into something deeper, disappointment. We could have handled the truth, Adrien said. We deserved that much. Another long silence stretched between them, and for a moment Naruto thought maybe, just maybe, Adrien was ready to let him explain more. But Adrien turned away, his shoulders stiff. Go home, Naruto, he said quietly. I need space. The words were calm, but final. Naruto stood there for a moment longer, looking at his friend's back, before giving the smallest of nods. All right, he murmured. I'll give you time. And with that, he turned, stepping away from the mansion gates, leaving Adrien standing alone. The heavy front door closed behind him, shutting out the world, but it did nothing to quiet the thoughts hammering against his chest. He climbed the stairs to his room slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last, until he finally pushed open the door and slumped onto his bed. The silence wasn't comforting, it felt hollow. Plague hovered nearby, his tiny wings hardly making a sound as the Kwami drifted closer, watching Adrien's blank stare at the ceiling. For once, the cat spirit didn't crack a joke. Didn't tease him about moping or offer a bite of camembert. Adrien finally broke the silence, his voice quiet, as if he wasn't sure he wanted an answer. Did you know, Plague? The Kwami blinked, know what? Adrien's jaw tensed, about him, about Fire Shadow, about Naruto. He exhaled hard through his nose, shaking his head. All this time, the signs were there, weren't they? L just didn't want to see them. Plague floated down onto the bed, folding his tiny arms. I didn't know, Adrien, I've seen a lot of weird in my time, but Naruto, or Fire Shadow, he's something different. I don't think even the other Kwamis or I could have guessed he had that much power hidden away. Adrien let out a bitter, humorless chuckle, his gaze dropping to his hands. His fingers curled slightly, recalling the fights they'd had as Chat Noir and Fire Shadow, all the unspoken tension, the mistrust that had festered between them long before the masks ever came off. He didn't even tell us, not when it mattered. We gave him our trust, and he threw it away like it meant nothing. His voice cracked slightly at the end, and he hated it. Plag looked at him carefully, his tone more serious than usual. Maybe he was scared. Adrien, people do dumb things when they're scared, especially when it's about protecting others. Adrien pressed his palms to his face, fingers digging into his hair as he spoke softly. Maybe, but I can't get past it, Plag. He didn't just lie to me, he followed my father, my family. His throat tightened as he forced the words out. If he really trusted me, he would have told me before I found out the hard way. Plag stayed quiet, letting Adrien's words hang in the room, knowing there wasn't a simple answer to any of it. The silence was finally broken by a sharp voice cutting through the air. The television automatically switched to a breaking news bulletin. Attention, another supervillain attack is in progress near central Paris. All civilians are advised to seek shelter immediately while heroes handle the situation. More updates to follow. Adrien's heart lurched. The weight of his emotions forcing itself into the background. He stood up, the hesitation still in his chest, but the responsibility clear in his mind. Paris was calling. Plag floated into view, voice quiet but certain. You know the drill, kid, you can't leave Paris waiting. Adrien nodded, forcing the bitter storm of feelings into the pit of his stomach. There'd be time to sort through them later. Right now, the city needed Chat Noir, even if that meant facing Fire's shadow again, with the weight of it all still fresh. His hand clenched into a fist, then relaxed as he reached for the ring. Claws out. The rooftops of Paris blurred beneath Chat Noir as he sprinted across them. The cool air brushing past his face, but the usual thrill wasn't there. His mind wasn't in it, not fully. The weight of his thoughts about Naruto still hung heavy on his chest, but he forced them aside as the chaos below snapped him back to the moment. Down on the street, the latest akumatized villain, some unlucky soul twisted into something monstrous, was lashing out, sending shockwaves through the plaza. The damage was growing worse by the second, but Ladybug was already on the scene, her yo-yo flashing through the air as she ducked behind cover. And right there, standing beside her, was him. Fire's shadow. Chat Noir landed silently on the rooftop beside them, his baton sliding back into a ready grip. His stance calm but closed off. No playful smirk. No sharp, cocky line. Just silence. Ladybug turned slightly, catching his arrival out of the corner of her eye, relief flickering on her face for a moment, but even she noticed the shift in his mood. She didn't comment on it, at least not yet. Finally, both of you, she said, glancing between the two boys. We'll stick to the basics. I'll distract the villain and go for the Akuma when I spot it. Chat, I want you to back me up and keep him off balance. Fire's shadow, you handle cover and limit the damage to civilians, clear? Chat Noir gave a sharp nod, his grip tightening around his baton. Got it. No protest, no comment. Nothing extra. Fire's shadow, standing only a few feet away, tilted his head slightly toward Adrien, as if wanting to say something, but Chat Noir had already moved, launching forward into the fray without so much as looking back. Ladybug's yo-yo wrapped around a piece of debris, pulling herself into the fight. Chat Noir stayed sharp and controlled, landing hit after hit to force the villain into defensive patterns, his teamwork precise, but cold. Every move was coordinated, but the usual spark of trust, the natural flow they had when fighting side by side, was gone. And Fire's shadow could feel it. The battle raged on around them, but even with the chaos, the distance between the two teammates was impossible to ignore. The villain let out a roar, sending another pulse of energy through the ground, cracking the pavement and sending shards of stone flying in every direction. Chat Noir darted forward, deflecting one chunk with a sharp swing of his baton, his eyes sharp but his face unreadable. Ladybug flipped overhead, her yo-yo snaring the villain's arm, pulling it off balance. "Now Chat," she shouted, counting on the timing they'd perfected a dozen times before. Without hesitation, Chat Noir struck, quick, efficient, but still distant. The blow sent the villain stumbling, exactly as planned, and Ladybug didn't waste a second. With practiced ease, her yo-yo wrapped around the corrupted item, purifying the Akuma in a flash of white light. Miraculous Ladybug. The world shimmered as the damage around them rewound, the buildings mending, debris vanishing, and Paris returning to its calm. The battle was over. Ladybug let out a soft breath, lowering her yo-yo as the purified charm rested in her hand. She glanced to her side, expecting the usual triumphant grin from her partners. Chat Noir landed silently beside her, baton sliding back to his belt. No grin, just a quiet nod. A second later, Fire Shadow dropped down too, landing on her other side. His mask couldn't hide the glance he gave Chat Noir, reading the unspoken wall still lingering between them. The three of them stood there for a moment. Shoulder to shoulder, the city quiet once again around them, the way it always ended, the way it always had. But the air between them wasn't quite the same, not yet. Ladybug looked between the two boys, sensing the tension but not forcing the conversation. For now, the fight was over, but the real battle between trust and hurt still lingered just beneath the surface. Ladybug let out a small, satisfied breath, raising her fist toward Fire Shadow, the old habit between the three of them, the gesture that always followed a victory. Fire Shadow glanced at her, and with a subtle but genuine smile beneath his mask, he lifted his fist to meet hers. But the third fist never came. Chat Noir stood a short distance away, baton resting against his shoulder. His gaze lingered on the city, then briefly flicked toward them, not angry, not cold, but distant. Without a word, he turned away, leaping onto the nearest rooftop, his silhouette vanishing into the Paris skyline. Naruto's eyes followed him, his fist still hanging in the air before slowly lowering it. The faint grin that had found its way onto his face during the battle slipped away, replaced by something more thoughtful. Ladybug glanced at him, her own smile fading slightly. She didn't say anything, not yet. There was nothing either of them could say that would fix it in a single conversation. As the wind brushed past them, Naruto's thoughts stirred. Guess a victory doesn't fix everything. His gaze drifted upward, scanning the path Adrien had taken through the rooftops. One battle at a time. He knew the real fight wasn't against villains or monsters right now, it was winning back the trust of his friend. And that wasn't going to happen overnight. Naruto's eyes lingered on the rooftop edge where Chat Noir had disappeared, the faint echo of his baton launch fading into the breeze. His hand lowered slowly, the attempted fist bump left hanging in the air, a small gesture that hit a little harder than any villain's attack. Ladybug shifted beside him, lowering her own hand as well. For a moment, the city felt unusually quiet, the adrenaline of the fight giving way to a weight heavier than exhaustion. "He's still not ready to talk to you," Ladybug said quietly, her voice soft but carrying that sharp thread of understanding. "I've never seen him act like this after a fight, not even when we've been on worse missions." Naruto didn't respond right away, his gaze fixed on the horizon, like he was searching for an answer out there. "I figured," he finally said, voice low. "Doesn't make it easier, though." Ladybug crossed her arms, glancing in the direction Chat Noir had vanished. "I think it's hard for him to understand why you couldn't just trust us from the start." Her voice wasn't cold, just honest. Naruto's jaw tightened under his mask, and for a moment the wind was the only one to answer. I never meant for it to feel like betrayal, he muttered. I thought I was doing the right thing, I thought keeping secrets was protecting you both. Ladybug let the words hang between them, her gaze softening. Sometimes trying to protect people means pushing them away without realizing it. She sighed, glancing at him. But trust doesn't just snap back like that, you'll have to give him time. Naruto gave a faint nod, the tension in his chest still heavy. Yeah, time. He watched the sky for another moment, his voice dropping almost to a whisper. I just hope there's still time for it. Ladybug didn't reply this time, because she was wondering the same thing. The next day came and went, and life in Paris seemed to settle back into its usual rhythm, at least on the surface. Marinette had gone back to her bright, cheerful self around him, her smiles and chatter almost like the whole week's tension had never happened. But Naruto could still see the difference, there was a little more thought behind her glances, a little more care in her words. Adrien, though, hadn't said a word. Not a text, not a call, the silence spoke louder than anything. Naruto didn't press it. He knew pushing wouldn't help. For now, all he could do was wait. And maybe focus on other things. That afternoon, with his usual grin slipping back into place, he stood at the bottom of the bakery steps, hands tucked into his jacket pockets, waiting on Marinette and Alia. Today wasn't about missions or secrets. Just one of his usual exploration runs through the hidden corners of Paris, and this time, he wasn't going alone. Naruto leaned casually against the old stone wall, the morning air crisp and light. His eyes flicked toward the corner as two familiar figures approached, Marinette and Alia, both dressed down in activewear, bright and ready for the little adventure he'd promised them. As Marinette jogged up beside him, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face with a soft smile, Naruto felt an unexpected warmth stir in his chest. His gaze lingered for a second too long, and before he could stop himself, his cheeks flushed with faint color. Focus, he muttered to himself, quickly looking away and scratching the back of his head to shake the thought off. Ready for this? He asked, flashing a grin to cover his moment of distraction. Long as you're not dragging us into another rooftop chase, I'm ready, Alia teased, stretching out her arms. You've been hyping this exploration all week. But her playful tone softened a little as she glanced toward him. Her curiosity peeking through. Actually, before we start, you never did explain why you were acting so weird a few days ago. You were all distant and quiet, not like you at all. Naruto paused, the words hesitating on his tongue, but Marinette beat him to it, speaking up smoothly. He was just dealing with a family thing, she said casually, glancing at Alia. It came out of nowhere, so he wasn't really himself that day. Alia blinked, surprised at first, then nodded slowly, her expression easing. You could have just told me we're your friends, Naruto. You don't have to pretend everything's fine when it's not. Naruto let out a quiet chuckle, the tension slipping from his shoulders. Yeah, you're right, I'll try to remember that next time. With the air cleared, the three of them exchanged smiles, their shoes tapping against the pavement as they finally started off together, just another day, or at least, that's what it felt like. The morning stretched into midday as the three of them wandered through winding alleyways, old stone staircases, and hidden corners of Paris most people overlooked. Naruto led the way, his energy light and playful, pointing out little shortcuts and odd spots he'd stumbled on during his solo wandering. Alia kept close, snapping pictures here and there for her blog, while Marinette walked just a little nearer to Naruto, her hands stuffed in her pockets. Occasionally glancing over at him whenever he'd get too far ahead. They moved through gardens tucked between apartment blocks, crossed rooftops with the city stretching wide around them, and even stopped at an old bookshop tucked away behind a rusted gate. Laughter came easier, the tension from the last few days falling away, and for a while it was as if nothing had changed. Eventually, Naruto slowed his pace as they approached the top of a narrow path leading to a tucked-away hill on the edge of the city. "I've been saving this one," he said over his shoulder, glancing back at them with a small, proud grin. The two girls followed, and as they reached the top, the world seemed to open up in front of them. Paris stretched endlessly across the skyline, the Seine weaving through the streets like silver thread, and the afternoon light painted the clouds soft gold and pink. Marinette blinked in quiet surprise, her breath catching for a second. Alia stood still, lowering her phone for once, the view too perfect for words. Naruto stepped forward a little, his hands tucked behind his head as the breeze ruffled his hair. "When everything gets too heavy, I usually come here, figured you two deserve to see it too." For a moment, none of them said anything. The quiet didn't feel awkward, it felt peaceful. Naruto dropped down onto the grass, leaning back on his hands as his gaze drifted across the skyline. The breeze tugged at his jacket, and for a moment, his usual easygoing smile softened into something a little more thoughtful. "I found this place the after day I moved here, technically my second exploration of Paris," he said quietly, voice light but honest. "I got lost, real lost. I was just wandering around, thinking maybe I made a mistake coming to Paris in the first place." Alia glanced at him, curiosity flickering in her expression, but she didn't interrupt. Marinette sat down beside him, quietly listening. "I don't know why, but when I stood here and looked out at all this, it felt like maybe I could belong, even if it was just for a little while." His words trailed off on the breeze. His gaze fixed on the horizon. But the peace in the moment didn't last long in his mind. His thoughts slipped, uninvited, back to Adrien. Adrien was right. No matter how much he'd told himself he was doing the right thing, keeping secrets, working alone, trying to shoulder it all, the truth was, he hadn't trusted them the way they'd trusted him, and now. He let out a quiet breath, tilting his head back. "I thought I was doing the right thing, protecting them, protecting Paris. But trust wasn't just about protecting someone. It was about standing beside them, no walls, no masks." The problem was, even if he understood that now, would Adrien, would his team, ever see him the same way again? The weight of it lingered in his chest, silent and heavy, as Marinette and Alia sat nearby, caught up in the view. For a while, the city below kept on glowing like nothing had changed, but for Naruto, everything had. The three of them sat in comfortable silence for a while, just letting the breeze and the view do the talking. The sun had started its slow descent, painting the sky in soft golds and pinks, and the streets below began to glow with the first flickers of evening lights. Alia stretched her arms over her head, letting out a content sigh. "You know," she said, breaking the quiet, "I gotta hand it to you, Naruto, you've got a real eye for hidden spots. I've lived here my whole life and never found this place." Naruto chuckled softly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Guess I just got lucky that day," he replied, though his mind was still half distracted with lingering thoughts. Marinette glanced over at him, catching the faint shift in his tone. "Or maybe," she offered gently, "you were meant to find it." Naruto blinked at her, surprised by how simple yet steady her words sounded. There wasn't a trace of doubt in her voice, and somehow, that eased something in him, just a little. Alia smirked and stood, brushing off her hands. "Well, lucky or not, next time you're dragging us somewhere cool, you better give me a heads up. I almost thought you were planning another big secret for a second." Marinette shot Alia a playful side eye, while Naruto gave a soft, almost apologetic smile. "Nothing like that," he said, standing up too. "I think I've had enough secrets for a while." Marinette glanced at him again, this time her expression more knowing, her smile subtle but warm. "Good," she said, "it's better that way." The three of them slowly started walking back, the city stretching out around them, peaceful for now. Naruto stayed a step or two behind as they chatted, hands tucked in his pockets, his mind finally quiet. For the first time in days, the weight in his chest had lessened, not gone, but lighter. And even though Adrien still hadn't reached out, he knew, at least, that some things could still be put right. The new week rolled in, and the classroom buzzed with its usual mix of chatter and shuffling papers. Naruto sat in his usual spot, but this time, between Alya and Marinette, his usual table across from Adrien left empty, the blonde still at his desk by the window. Naruto kept his eyes on his lunch, poking at it more than eating. Alya was mid-story about one of Nino's weekend DJ experiments when Marinette glanced over at him, brow raised. "Hey, why aren't you sitting with Adrien?" she asked softly, leaning in just enough so Alya wouldn't catch the question fully. Naruto blinked, his chopsticks pausing midair. For a second his throat tightened. But he caught himself. He couldn't exactly say the truth, not the part where their fight had more to do with their masked lives than anything else. "We had a dumb argument," he answered, giving her a half-hearted smile. "I figured I'd give him some space until he's ready to talk it out." Marinette nodded slowly, her eyes flicking toward Adrien at his desk. The blonde was staring out the window, lost in his own world, before looking back at Naruto. "Sounds just like another argument you had. I'll give you the same advice here." Naruto nodded, pretending to refocus on Alya, who was now going on about a new blog post idea. He let the conversation drift around him, tossing in the occasional smile or reply. But his mind had already pulled away. That feeling was back. A quiet, crawling sensation along the back of his neck, sharp enough that he knew it wasn't just nerves. His chakra stirred faintly under his skin, reacting before his thoughts could fully catch up. Someone was watching them. His eyes flicked casually across the room, out the window, down the hall. Nothing. But the feeling never left. The subtle feeling in Naruto's chest twisted into full-blown alarm the moment the floor gave a low, unnatural groan. The windows rattled in their frames, the walls shuddered, and then, like the weight of the world itself had suddenly dropped on the building, the entire classroom began to quake. Desks screeched across the floor, the lights flickered, and the students' conversations shattered into sharp cries of panic. Naruto braced his hand on the desk, teeth clenching as the tremors grew worse. His mind barely kept up with the physical chaos, the same bitter thought flashing through him like lightning: "It's always something, just 1 week, is that too much to ask? 1 week where Hawkmoth leaves Paris alone so I can deal with my own crap." The speakers on the wall crackled to life, the principal's voice cutting through the rattling room. "Attention, all students and staff, this is not a drill. Stay inside your classrooms, do not attempt to leave the building, this is an emergency situation. Treat this as an earthquake protocol, stay low, stay away from the windows, and remain calm." But Naruto barely heard the end of the announcement. His eyes locked briefly with Marinette's, both of them knew there was no waiting this one out. Marinette subtly shifted from her crouched spot under her desk, giving Alya's shoulder a small reassuring squeeze before she inched closer to Naruto. The quake rumbled on as the two quietly slipped through the nearest door, unnoticed amid the chaos. Naruto glanced once toward Adrien's desk before leaving. Empty, figures, he thought, he never misses a beat. They ducked into the nearest empty hallway, the world still rumbling around them, and without a second's hesitation Marinette pulled her earrings free, whispering the words that had become second nature. "Tiki, spots on." In a flash of warm pink light, the everyday girl vanished, replaced by Ladybug, confidence settling on her face like a second skin. Naruto stood right beside her, rolling his shoulders as his fingers reached for his watch. With a sharp, practiced tap on the screen, a pulse of orange light shot from the device. Fabric burst from it, like ink blooming through water, swirling up his arms and chest. The black and orange we've wrapped around him. Tightening into his suit, sleek, reinforced, with a jacket draped over his shoulders like a modern shinobi. The last piece formed as the black mask stretched into place, the pointed edges locking in as the hood flipped up. A final spark of orange along the watch face blinked out, leaving only the fire-red glow of his eyes behind. Fire Shadow stood tall, cracking his knuckles once. Guess Paris didn't feel like giving me a break today. Ladybug pulled her yo-yo free, twirling it once in her palm. Let's go remind them why that was a bad idea. Without another word, the two heroes leapt out the window into the chaos. Both heroes landed hard on the pavement, side by side. As the red cloud-patterned cloak came into view, the same figure Naruto had faced the night everything unraveled. His mind flickered through the memory, sharp and unbidden, before his gaze hardened, locking onto the man. Without looking away, Naruto spoke quietly, his voice low and steady, "That's the cloaked guy from Friday." Ladybug's eyes darted between Naruto and the figure, her brow furrowing. "So, not an Akuma, you mean he's the one you've been suspecting, the one behind all of it, even Hawkmoth?" Naruto gave a short, sharp nod, just as the cloaked man's voice rang out, smooth and full of unshakable confidence. "I was starting to wonder how long it'd take you to show. Fire Shadow, or should I say, by your real name." Naruto's eyes narrowed, his muscles tensing as the man tilted his head, as if amused by the tension. "Honestly, it wasn't hard," the figure continued, voice dripping with mockery. "A kid from Japan, shinobi blood in his veins, transfers to Paris, suddenly a new hero shows up with chakra abilities. Connect the dots." Naruto stood firm, his voice cold and even, "If you know that much, you're not just here to gloat, what do you want?" The cloaked man chuckled, hands folded behind his back like this was all a game. Pulling the strings, giving Hawkmoth his toy, he shook his head, turning to Ladybug. "That would be telling, let's just say I'm not the only one holding the leash around here. If I were, I'd be back at headquarters, not out here, looking for your blonde boyfriend." Both Naruto and Ladybug stiffened at the comment, their cheeks faintly coloring, but neither dropped their guard. Naruto's thoughts sharpened. So it's not just him. There's someone, or something, higher up. And why come for me, what's he after? His gaze drifted toward the man's eyes, unnatural and unmistakable. Purple, ringed, like a ripple frozen in time. It wasn't just a bloodline trait, it was something else. Something far worse. Finally, Naruto broke the silence. "If you've been in Paris this long, why now? You've had plenty of chances before. Why wait until now to come for me?" The man's grin widened, a predator savoring the moment. Now, I can't just hand you the whole plot, can I? This isn't a video game, kid." He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice, "But I will tell you this, I'm not here for you, I'm here for what you carry." Naruto's stomach dropped as the man said it, his voice sharp and deliberate. "I'm here for the 10 tails." The words hit harder than any attack, his mind snapped to Kurama. "The 10 tails, no one calls him that here." The cloaked figure went on, pacing slowly, "You've studied the old shinobi texts, dug into the past, but there are pieces you'll never find in books." His voice lowered, "Your little fox friend, he wasn't always the 10 tails. Once, long ago, he was the 9. Until about, 1,000 years ago, give or take." Naruto's throat felt dry, even Kurama had never spoken of that. "Not many know the how, even the ones I report to won't say," the man went on, almost amused at Naruto's expression. "But the other tailed beasts, they're still out there, scattered, waiting, it's time we bring them together again. He paused, watching Naruto's reaction. You already know how powerful that beast is, even alone. The others, weaker, shadows of what he's become. But one concept, one power. The man's eyes flicked between Naruto and Ladybug, his voice a smooth whisper now. Change, that's what your fox holds now. That's the true strength. Imagine what the world would look like with that power in the right, or wrong, hands. The cloaked man's voice remained calm, even as his words grew heavier. Just imagine it, he mused, hands outstretched slightly as if painting a grand vision. That kind of power, the power of change, boosted, amplified beyond even what your little fox has shown you. Naruto's stomach twisted as the pieces slid together in his head. The other tailed beasts, they're not after Kurama to control him, they're meant to push him, force him to evolve, make him stronger. His mind barely had time to settle on the thought when a black blur cut across the conversation. Cataclysm. Chat Noir lunged in from above, his gloved hand sparking with destructive energy, aiming straight for the man's chest. The moment his hand connected, the black cloak rippled, crumbled, and was obliterated by the sheer force of the attack. But the man didn't vanish. Before Chat Noir could even process it, a sharp kick to his ribs sent him flying, skidding hard across the cracked pavement. The man adjusted his now tattered cloak, dusting off his shoulder with casual indifference. "TCH, I think that's enough talk for one day," he muttered, his voice colder than before. His head tilted, those ringed, violet eyes fixing on the three of them like a predator sizing up prey. "I'll take care of you three, right here." Naruto gritted his teeth, immediately turning toward Chat Noir, trying to signal for a plan. "Chat, we need to," but before the words could even leave his mouth, Chat Noir was already moving, spinning his staff into position and charging back in, no hesitation, no waiting. His body moved on instinct, frustration and adrenaline overriding strategy. Naruto's hands tensed, knowing that this wasn't just going to be another fight, not this time. The moment Chat Noir rushed back in, the entire air seemed to snap like a pulled wire. Naruto had no choice but to follow, legs kicking off the cracked ground, his mind already sharpening for battle. Ladybug flanked his side, Yo-Yo snapping forward and locking onto a ledge before she swung hard into the fray. The cloaked man moved like he'd seen it all before. Chat Noir's staff came in first, slicing through the air with enough speed to split the wind, aiming for the man's shoulder. Without missing a beat, the man's hand lifted, fingers twitching, and the air itself seemed to bend, the gravity shifting just enough to make Chat swing slow, almost sluggish, as if his body weighed 10 times more. With a flick of his wrist, the man sent Chat Noir crashing into a parked car on the street's edge. Naruto slid in under the pressure, chakra flaring in his palms as two shadow clones poofed to life on either side. No words. Just action. One clone circled wide, the other high, both lunging at the cloaked figure at once. The man's eyes tracked them, the faintest twitch in his fingers snapping both clones out of existence before their attacks could land. But that was the opening Naruto wanted. Wind style, gale palm. A compressed burst of wind howled from his hand, forcing the man to shift his stance as the sheer force blasted toward him. Dust and broken glass whipped into the air as Ladybug swept in from above, Yo-Yo winding around the man's arm and tightening like steel cable. The cloaked figure barely reacted. His feet didn't even move. The moment the yo-yo tightened, the man twisted his wrist, gravity spiked. Ladybug was ripped from the air, crashing down onto the concrete before she could cut the line. Naruto grit his teeth, rushing in with raw speed, using the debris and angles of the broken pavement for cover. His chakra flared again, this time gathering in his palm, the whirling spiral of a Rasengan forming in an instant. He lunged, the bright blue sphere spinning furiously, aiming directly for the man's side. But as the gap closed, the air thickened, heavy as stone, his body slowed under the weight of the gravity field. His feet dragged against the street as if the world itself was holding him back. The cloaked figure caught Naruto's wrist mid-attack, the Rasengan trembling violently in his hand. Threatening to explode too early. "You've learned some tricks," the man muttered, tightening his grip, "but you're still only playing shinobi." With a grunt, Naruto flipped his body midair, planting a kick squarely at the man's head. The moment their grip broke, another clone poofed into existence behind the enemy, Rasengan ready and slamming it toward his back, but gravity twisted again, crushing the clone into the ground before the attack could connect. Ladybug was already back on her feet, moving fast and fluid, her yo-yo lashing out to catch the man off guard while Naruto rebalanced, summoning another shadow clone mid-dash. From the corner of his eye, Naruto saw Noir getting up, staff braced against the cracked sidewalk. Face twisted in quiet frustration. "Chat, we need to work together," Naruto called over, the urgency clear in his voice. "You can't beat him alone." But Chat didn't even look his way, his eyes locked on the cloaked figure. His stance was tight, defensive. His mind was somewhere else, somewhere personal. Ladybug and Naruto exchanged a glance. Both of them knew the truth. Noir wasn't really listening. The fight pressed on. The cloaked figure kept them separated, using gravitational shifts to throw them back, sending Ladybug into the side of a lamppost, Naruto skidding across the pavement. Each time one of them got close, the man met them head-on, his strength unnatural. His timing surgical. Naruto's breathing was heavy now, chest rising and falling as he watched Noir circle back into the fray, this time rushing in without a word, swinging his staff again and again, the rage behind every strike making him predictable. The cloaked figure blocked each hit effortlessly, redirecting the staff, kicking Chat back with barely a flex of muscle. "He's not listening," Naruto muttered, his jaw tight. Ladybug wiped the blood from the corner of her lip and pushed herself back to her feet, standing beside Naruto. "He's shutting us out." Naruto nodded, tightening his fists. "And we can't get through to him in the middle of this." The cloaked figure stood between them. Calm, poised, utterly unbothered, as if the battle hadn't even started. He raised a single hand, the air around them warping as the gravity pulsed again, debris lifting from the ground, stones floating midair, as if the world itself was waiting for his command. "We're running out of time," Naruto muttered, his chakra already building again. He locked eyes with Ladybug. "We break his focus, you and me, Chat will follow, whether he wants to or not." Without waiting for a reply, Naruto charged forward, another clone already forming behind him, Rasengan burning bright in hand. The moment they charged back in, the air cracked under the weight of the cloaked man's power. Naruto led the push. Shadow clones splitting away from his sides, Rasengan spinning in their palms, while Ladybug darted high with her yo-yo primed and ready. Noir came in from the flank, staff spinning with expert precision. But the man didn't even flinch. With a sharp flick of his hand, the gravity around them snapped. A concussive burst exploded outward, ripping through the air like a pressure bomb. All three heroes were sent flying. Naruto slammed hard against a light post, gritting his teeth as the metal bent slightly from the force. Ladybug tumbled into a cracked storefront, catching herself at the last second. Noir wasn't so lucky, the blast sent him spinning through the air. His body completely exposed mid-flight. The cloaked figure was already there, hand raised, another gravity strike poised to crush him midair. Naruto didn't hesitate. Before the attack could land, his body blurred forward, chakra surging into his legs as he flung himself into Chat's path. His arm locked around Noir's chest, twisting their momentum midair, and they both hit the ground hard, but the blast meant for Adrien never connected. The two tumbled and skidded across the concrete, finally coming to a breathless stop near Ladybug. For a moment, neither spoke. Only the sound of the broken street and the faint pulse of the villain's power filled the air. Chat Noir's head hung low, the weight of what just happened sinking in. His fist tightened. Why'd you do that? Naruto let out a shaky breath, rolling onto his back, staring at the cloudy sky for a moment. Because you're my teammate Adrien, he said at a whisper, no matter how mad you are at me, no matter how distant you try to be, I'm still going to watch your back. The name hit hard. Adrien blinked, the edges of his anger cracking, breaking away under the simple truth of it. Naruto wasn't just acting out of instinct, it was real trust. Real care. The same trust he'd refused to accept before. Ladybug pulled herself over to them, giving them both a small, knowing smile despite the bruises lining her skin. Geez, you two sure know how to pick a fight, she teased, lightly nudging both their shoulders. Looks like the chat fight's finally over. Chat Noir let out a weak chuckle, shaking his head, the tension in his chest finally easing. His eyes flicked over to Naruto, and this time, there was no anger behind them, only understanding. Yeah, I guess it is, he said quietly. I wasn't being fair. Naruto pushed himself up, offering a faint grin. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I wasn't being a shithead either, it's on both of us, so let's stop being idiots for now. The moment passed, steady and strong. The three heroes looked back toward the cloaked figure, who stood at the center of the destruction. Waiting, like a hunter sizing up his prey. Ladybug stood, spinning her yo-yo once, determination resetting across her face. Alright boys, time to end this, together. Naruto reached into his gear pouch, fingers brushing over a small unsealing tag marked with kanji. A flick of chakra released the seal, and in a flash of smoke and light, a massive body-sized sword materialized into his hand, thick, heavy, and sharp as a fresh storm. He planted the blade into the cracked pavement, adjusting his grip, the weight of battle and purpose settling into his bones. Now this, Naruto muttered, eyes burning with renewed focus, feels more like the team I wanted. Chat Noir spun his staff. His stance locking back into place beside them, let's make this count. Ladybug's yo-yo snapped tight in her grip, her smirk returning. Paris is watching, let's show them what we've got. The three stood side by side, battle-worn but unshaken, ready for the final round. The three of them moved as one. Ladybug shot forward first, her yo-yo snapping out like lightning, wrapping around the cloaked man's wrist before he could make another move. She yanked hard, twisting his balance just enough for Chat Noir to close the gap, staff spinning fast, aiming for a clean strike to the ribs. At the same moment, Naruto's clones burst from the sides, two armed with Razengans and the original gripping his unsealed blade tight. Dashing in from behind. For a heartbeat, it looked like the perfect plan, seamless teamwork, synchronized like clockwork. But the cloaked man's reaction was almost too calm. Just as Chat's staff was about to connect, the gravity around them shifted again, crushing down like an invisible weight. Ladybug's yo-yo whip cracked mid-air, snapping free from his arm as her footing crumbled beneath her. Naruto's clones were ripped apart by the sudden shift, distorted and popping out of existence in bursts of chakra. The real Naruto gritted his teeth, forcing chakra through his legs to fight against the crushing pressure, muscles straining as he swung his blade downward in one heavy arc, but the moment the steel met its target, it froze. The man's bare hand caught the sword, fingers locking around the flat side, stopping all of Naruto's strength dead. The pressure of the grip alone sent cracks spiraling across the blade. Then the force exploded outward again. All three were sent flying, Chat Noir slammed into the side of a bus, Ladybug hit the ground hard, skidding along the pavement, and Naruto tumbled through a half-destroyed car, his sword skidding away from his hand. For a long second, the only sound was the dull hum of the villain's power vibrating through the broken street. Naruto forced himself onto his knees, panting hard, sweat trailing down the side of his face. They'd worked together, truly worked together, and it still wasn't enough. His eyes lifted toward the cloaked man, who stood exactly where they'd left him, completely unbothered by the combined force of Paris's three strongest heroes. Naruto wiped his mouth, glancing to his teammates. Ladybug pushed herself back onto her feet, her arms shaking slightly from the strain. Chat Noir, bruised and scuffed, stood slowly, leaning on his staff for support. His voice was quieter now, no trace of anger, just focus. We hit him together, full force, he barely moved. Naruto's fists tightened. His mind spun, racing for another plan. This wasn't like any Akuma fight. This was deeper. Smarter. And it wasn't just strength the enemy was using, it was experience. Battle instinct honed beyond anything Paris had faced before. The cloaked man tilted his head slightly, as if watching them piece it together amused him. You're starting to see the difference now, the man called out, voice calm and cutting. You are strong, all of you, but not strong enough. Naruto pushed up fully, standing shoulder to shoulder with Ladybug and Chat once more. No, he muttered, voice steady. Not yet, but we will be. Their bodies were battered, their breath unsteady, but the fire in their eyes hadn't gone out. It was far from over. The man stood unfazed, his cloak torn, his expression steady, as if this battle had never been a real challenge to begin with. You can claw, you can bite, you can scratch the surface all you want, the man said, voice sharp with finality, but I'm walking away from this with the 10 tails, whether you're alive or not. That's the only outcome. Naruto gritted his teeth, sweat trailing down the side of his face as the weight of the words hung heavy in the air. Beside him, Ladybug's hands tightened around her yo-yo, and Chat Noir, chest rising and falling, clutched his staff with shaking hands. It doesn't matter if I'm alive or dead, Naruto's mind repeated, his gaze flicking toward his teammates. His body felt like lead, every muscle pushed beyond its limits, but the real ache wasn't physical. It was the helplessness. That's when he heard it. The faint beep, Chat Noir's ring. Naruto's gaze snapped to the side, catching the flicker of panic crossing Adrien's face. His time was running out. If he detransformed now, they'd lose all chance at standing together. And then he felt it, a pull deep in his chest. A stirring ripple, like the surface of water disturbed by a stone. Kurama. The fox's voice echoed through his mind, low and calm but carrying more weight than anything the enemy had said. You've held back long enough, kid, it's time, stop fighting like you're alone, become more. Naruto closed his eyes, drawing in a slow breath as his hand curled into a fist. His chakra flickered. Flowing like a stream loosening a dam. The familiar, warm blue glow poured out of him, but it didn't stop there. The light shifted, becoming lighter, brighter, as if the very nature of his chakra was reshaping, evolving. Not wild or untamed, but refined, harmonized, balanced. His eyes snapped open, the usual blue now burning more vividly, and his voice cut through the silence. I'm not the only one standing against you. His voice carried, stronger with each word, cutting through the doubt and the fear. You think this is about me, about the 10 tails. But I've never fought alone, I'm part of something bigger, I've got people at my side who believe in me, and I believe in them. His eyes glanced toward Ladybug and Chat Noir, who looked back, breathing hard but steady, listening. The truth is, the moment I stood beside them, I was already stronger than you or your higher-ups have ever planned for. His chakra flared outward, spreading like a living wave, brushing against Chat Noir and Ladybug. Both heroes stiffened, their eyes widening as warmth flooded their limbs. For Chat Noir, the weight pressing against him suddenly felt lighter. The beeping on his ring stopped, the countdown halting. His body, moments ago on the verge of exhaustion, surged with new strength, as if something inside had been reignited. Ladybug felt it too: clarity, focus, strength. The fatigue pulling at her bones dissolved, her mind clearing, the gravity pressing her down lifting. And Naruto, he felt the connection lock into place. For the first time, the three of them stood completely unified. No barriers, no distance. Just trust. The cloaked man paused, his expression shifting ever so slightly as he took a step back, sensing the change. Naruto exhaled slowly, his voice lower now, steady and calm. So if you're still planning to take the 10 tails, you'll have to go through all of us. The world felt different. The moment Naruto's chakra flowed into them, it wasn't just their strength that grew, it was as if the air itself had shifted. Gravity no longer pressing down but lifting them, urging them forward. The cloaked man tensed, his smirk fading ever so slightly. So, you've awakened more than I expected. But there was no time for more words. Ladybug moved first, her yo-yo slicing through the air like a comet, the cord crackling with that same strange, amplified energy. She closed the gap in an instant, landing precise, whip-fast strikes, her body moving fluidly, too fast for even his gravity manipulations to immediately pin her. Each strike forced the man to twist, defend, shift his stance, but before he could counter, Chat Noir came crashing in from above, his staff extended to full length midair. The impact when the two collided sent a shockwave through the street. The staff glowing faintly, charged with both his own energy and the boost Naruto had given. His strikes were no longer desperate, no longer wild, every movement was sharp, controlled, filled with confidence. And when the man shoved him back, the moment his feet touched ground, Naruto was already there. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Blue-tinted smoke burst into the air as multiple copies of Naruto surrounded the cloaked man from all sides. Each clone flickered with that same evolving chakra, their forms no longer flickering weakly under strain but sharp, stable, and fast. They moved in unison, like a perfectly trained squad, attacking from every angle. The man's hands flexed, gravity distorting the street around him. Crushing cars and cracking pavement, but Naruto was ready for it this time. Wind style, gale palm. A surge of wind broke through the distorted air, forcing the gravity shift outward, creating an opening. Naruto was already weaving another set of signs. Fire style, phoenix flame barrage. Bright, blue-tinged embers shot forward, flames that were hotter, faster, denser than before. The man raised a hand, shielding himself with a crushing field of gravity, but the second the flames cleared, another Naruto, the real one, came leaping through. A Rasengan spun in his palm, but it wasn't the same as before. The orb glowed blindingly, its edges crackling with a strange, vibrant shift, as if the core of the technique had evolved alongside his chakra. The man barely deflected it, skidding back across the broken pavement, for the first time, his stance faltering. Naruto didn't stop, his hands blurred through more signs, switching styles without hesitation. Earth style, stone barricade. The ground burst upward, jagged walls cutting off the man's escape path just as Ladybug came swinging in from above, using the momentum of her enhanced yo-yo to drive a kick straight into the man's defense, forcing him to the ground. Chat Noir was already there waiting. His staff compressed, coiled energy building at the tip. Cataclysm. He unleashed it. the staff striking the ground where the man was pinned, but even then the cloaked figure lashed out, his gravity twisting the impact enough to narrowly avoid total destruction. But Naruto wasn't done. He leapt back, forming hand signs mid-air, and as his feet touched ground, he reached into his sealing pouch. A scroll unfurled in his hand, glowing with seal marks, before a burst of smoke exploded outward, and in its place a large, body-sized sword appeared in his grip, its steel humming, chakra channels lighting up along the blade's edge with that same bright hue. He rested the blade across his shoulder, turning his head just enough to glance at his two teammates. Now or never. Ladybug gave a nod, spinning her yo-yo tight around her wrist, while Chat-Noir spun his staff back into position. The three of them moved as one. Their timing was no longer scattered, no longer desperate. Every attack flowed from one to the next, a perfect rhythm. One would strike, the next would cover. The third would force an opening. Over and over, forcing the man back step by step, his gravity bending the world, but the three heroes bending right back. This wasn't the same team that stood trembling minutes ago. They were stronger, together, the rhythm of the fight shifted. For the first time, the cloaked man wasn't leading the battle, the three heroes were. Their teamwork had sharpened into something nearly unstoppable. Every time he raised a hand, Ladybug was already intercepting. Every time gravity began to twist the air, Naruto's clones were flanking him, forcing him to break concentration. And every time he tried to retreat or reposition, Chat-Noir was right there, his staff moving like a blur, cutting him off. Naruto darted around the man, the large sword glowing with his enhanced chakra, slashing in wide, clean arcs. His strikes weren't wild, each swing was controlled, measured, forcing the man into smaller and smaller defensive positions, until he had nowhere left to run. Ladybug swung past at high speed, her yo-yo snagging the man's shoulder. The wire snapped taut, pulling him off balance just long enough for Chat-Noir to slam his extended staff straight into the man's ribs, launching him skyward with a sharp, explosive force. Now, Naruto shouted, eyes sharp and focused. Without needing a second word, the three heroes moved. Ladybug whipped her yo-yo high, catching the man mid-air and yanking him downward. At the same time, Chat-Noir flipped forward, adjusting the length of his staff mid-spin, aiming directly at the cloaked man's descent. Naruto surged forward, his chakra-empowered body moving faster than gravity could pull, his large blade swinging upward at the last second. A perfect combination, crack. The man was caught in the air by Chat-Noir's staff, flipped over and slammed down with brute force into the street. Naruto was already waiting. Twisting his body and slamming the flat of his blade downward, driving him harder into the crater forming beneath. Ladybug followed in immediately after, landing squarely on the ground beside them, yo-yo spun tight, prepared to strike again. Dust and broken stone scattered around them in silence. The man lay at the center of the impact, unmoving for the first time since the battle began, his cloak torn, his hood knocked away, strands of dark hair messy and wild, his chest heaving. The city around them seemed to exhale, the twisted gravity settling, the world finally steady once again. For now, the fight was over. The three stood, weapons lowered but bodies still tense, waiting for the slightest hint of movement. But all that came was silence, the cloaked man pinned and beaten, at least for the moment. Naruto tightened his grip on the sword, his breath steady but low, his mind racing. They had done it. The dust slowly settled around the broken street, cracks webbed out beneath the three heroes as they stood together, the cloaked man pinned in the center of the crater. His chest rose and fell in ragged, shallow breaths, beaten, bruised, but not entirely broken. Naruto kept his sword raised, the glow of his chakra still pulsing through the blade, ready for the man's next move. But the man didn't rise. Instead, a faint, humorless chuckle echoed from his throat. His lips pulled into a crooked smile, blood trailing down the corner of his mouth as he tilted his head just enough to look at Naruto. "Heh, impressive, I'll admit it." His voice was hoarse, but it carried weight, the kind of confidence only someone who knew more than they let on could have. "You've grown faster than I expected, Fire Shadow." Naruto's grip tightened, the name making his muscles stiffen. Chat Noir and Ladybug tensed, but the man's gaze was focused squarely on Naruto. "But you didn't win," the man's voice was steady now, like every inch of his beaten body didn't matter. "This wasn't about me, I'm only the first. Others will come, stronger, smarter, with sharper claws and longer reach. You're living on borrowed time, boy." Naruto's eyes narrowed. The man exhaled slowly, his head tilting back toward the dull gray sky. "You'll have to make a choice, Uzumaki. You can't save everyone, you can't protect both worlds, not Paris, and not your own." His gaze flicked sideways, barely glancing toward Ladybug and Chat Noir, but the meaning was clear. This was just the opening act. For a moment, all the battle adrenaline in Naruto's chest twisted into something heavier. His heart thumped against his ribs, the words sinking deep, deeper than any blow the cloaked man had landed. A choice. The words echoed in his head, even as the man's breath grew shallow, his body finally succumbing to the damage. Naruto lowered his sword slightly, his thoughts clouded. The path ahead had just become so much more dangerous, and the weight of it all, of what it would demand from him, settled squarely on his shoulders. Ladybug glanced at him, sensing the shift, but she didn't say anything, not yet. The battle was over. But the real war was only beginning. The low hum of engines and the distant chatter of travelers echoed through the airport terminal, but to Naruto, it all felt distant, like white noise against the storm of thoughts in his head. Standing there, hands stuffed into his jacket pockets, he faced the small group gathered in front of him. Marinette, Alia, Adrien, Nino, and her parents, all of them had come to see him off. Their faces were a mix of concern and forced smiles, but the unspoken understanding hung between them. Naruto let his gaze drift for a moment. He wasn't good at this part, the quiet, the goodbyes, he hated it. Funny, he thought, I spent so much time trying to hold this new life together, and now I have to walk away from it, just when it felt like I was starting to belong. But he knew deep down this wasn't a choice, not really. The cloaked man's words hadn't left him, even now, more were coming. If he stayed, the people here, his friends, his new family, would be caught in the crossfire. He forced a small, easy grin onto his face, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "So, I guess this is it for now." His voice was calm, steady, but even Marinette caught the subtle crack in it. "Some family matters came up back in Japan, stuff I can't ignore." Alia folded her arms, but her worry was written all over her face. "You better not vanish on us for good, Naruto." He chuckled softly at that, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm not the disappearing type, I'll be back, I promise." Marinette lowered her gaze, her fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. She knew, or at least suspected, that there was more to it than family matters. But she didn't press him, not here, not now. Adrien stood a little off to the side, hands buried in his pockets as well. His eyes met Naruto's for just a second, the silence between them saying more than words could. Their last fight, their trust rebuilt on the battlefield, it all hung in the air. Adrien gave the smallest nod. He understood. Nino was the one to break the quiet, "We'll hold the fort down while you're gone, man." Naruto's smile softened, a little more genuine this time, "I know you will." He turned to Marinette's parents last, bowing his head slightly, not just out of habit, but out of respect. "Thank you, for everything, for letting me stay under your roof. And making me feel like I was part of a family. Sabine reached forward, resting a gentle hand on his shoulder. You are Naruto, whenever you come back, your room will still be there. The weight in his chest tightened, but he nodded. As the final boarding call echoed overhead, he took a slow breath and stepped back. I'll come back, he said again, firmer this time. I promise. And with that, Naruto turned, lifting his bag over his shoulder and making his way toward the gate, his thoughts swirling with everything still left unsaid. Just as Naruto turned to walk away, the sound of hurried footsteps behind him made him pause. Wait, Marinette's voice called, softer but urgent. Before he could react, her hand caught his wrist, turning him gently back around. His blue eyes met hers, wide with surprise, just as she stood on her toes and pressed her lips softly against his. The world seemed to still, the noise of the airport fading into nothing. For a moment, there was only the quiet brush of her lips and the thunder of his own heartbeat. When she pulled back, her cheeks were burning, but her eyes were steady, determined. I meant to say this sooner, she whispered, her voice trembling but sure. I like you, Naruto, a lot. Her fingers slowly let go of his sleeve, but before stepping back, she added, you don't have to give me an answer now. When you come back, I'll be waiting. A second of stunned silence hung before a burst of cheers rang out from behind them. Alia and Nino both grinned wide, her parents sharing knowing, supportive smiles. Even Adrien let out a small, warm laugh, the tension between them all melting away for just a moment. Marinette, flustered beyond belief, buried her face in her hands, mumbling, you weren't supposed to cheer. Naruto stood there, still feeling the warmth of her kiss lingering against his lips, a rare softness settling in his chest. His doubts, his worries, all of it, didn't disappear, but her words gave them something else to hold on to. Something that tethered him to this place, and to her. I'll come back. The promise had been strong before, but now it was unshakable. With a small, but real smile, he lifted his hand in a wave as he backed away toward the gate. I'll hold you to that, he said quietly, before turning once more, this time certain, no matter what waited for him out there, he would come back. Naruto walked toward the terminal, the voices behind him fading with every step. His hands slid into his pockets as the weight of the moment settled quietly on his shoulders. Everything, the battles, the secrets, the choices, Marinette's kiss, swirled through his mind like a silent storm. So much has changed, and there's still more waiting. His gaze lifted toward the sky beyond the glass windows. The evening light cutting through the clouds. I'll be back. And with that thought anchoring him, Naruto kept walking, the path ahead uncertain, but his resolve stronger than ever. That's it for today. I hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe, and comment ideas if you can, and maybe you could share this with your friends, because you never know, they might like what ifs too. So without further ado, all KAGE, out.